But first be warned, some material may not be suitable for devout Catholics. Listener discretion is advised. So one of the perks of Catholicism is confession, which is sin, confess, and still be in good graces. Medieval kings took this to the extreme, doing whatever they wanted throughout their lives, then confessing everything on their deathbeds and soaring right into heaven at death. For the rest of the congregation, they could purchase indulgences, a kind of get-out-of-purgatory free card. And I have the right to make fun of this. My grandmother bought one for my family. That's what you see behind me. This brings me to the reason I've titled this performance Immaculate Misconceptions. This designation applies to the simplistic explanations, half-truths, canonical misinterpretations, and downright disinformation I received from the mouths of my teachers. I entered Catholic grade school as a tabula rasa, a blank slate, upon which the nuns and priests would inscribe their version of the world on my mind. Now, to be fair, some of the misconceptions and misunderstandings were mine. In my unenlightened and innocent state, I didn't examine things. I didn't evaluate them for logic and rationality. I just took everything I heard at face value and as absolute gospel truth throughout my years at Catholic. So here are the couple of the immaculate misconceptions that I believed in growing up. Our church was officially known as the Church of the Immaculate Conception of St. Mary, or more commonly as St. Mary's Church. When I was very young, one of the nuns explained to us that the church we saw out the rear window of our classroom was, and I quote, the one true church. I took this to mean that our church, St. Mary's Church, on South George Street in York, Pennsylvania, was the one true Holy Catholic church, and that all other Catholic churches, such as St. Patrick's a mere 2 blocks away, were not. This somewhat rabid point of view had obvious advantages when inciting to compete with these other schools in fundraisers and sporting events. We believed that our church had a holy mission to sell more hoagies, more Hershey's chocolate, more magazine subscriptions than all the others, and to win at CYO's boys basketball, and therefore defeat those hypocrites and heathens on the other side. As for human reproduction, these are the following steps that I was aware of. 1. A man and woman meet, fall in love, and get married. 2. God decides to bless them with a child. Apparently there's some sort of divine, mysterious lottery system. 3. The woman's stomach swells up for no apparent reason. I heard the word pregnant once on TV. When I asked my mother what it meant, she told me I was too young to understand. 4. The woman goes to the hospital, lies in bed, a shaft of light from God shines down, a baby appears in her arms. This is what is known as the miracle of life. No penises, no vaginas, no sperm or egg, just love and a shaft of light. Now, the most lucrative racket the nuns had was having us bring in money to buy pagan babies. Yes, you heard me correctly, buy pagan. On a monthly basis, everyone in our class would bring in 50 or so, and Sister would send it to whatever foreign mission would make the acquisition for her. Now, what are pagan babies, you ask? These were infants of foreign extraction living in poor, undeveloped countries in Africa, South America, and Asia. There was a large market for them in the 1960s, and we school children purchased many of them at the bargain price of $5 a head. Now, what happened to pagan babies after they were purchased and presumably baptized? Catholic is unknown. One hopes they were properly fed with the money and given the name that we as the buyers were allowed to select for them. Although my older, cynical self, living in a post-colonial world, has grave doubts. A recurring theme running through our time in grade school was the nuns threatening us with our permanent record. We were told repeatedly, everything that you do from the first grade on goes into your permanent records. These earthly files seemed more important than any karmic or heavenly ledger books that God would be keeping, although he would probably still have to sign off on us at graduation. These permanent records were so important that, if we went on a job interview, the interviewer would call our grade school and request a copy of our records so he could confront us with them at the interview. He'd look at us from across his desk with a contemptuous scowl on his face he'd no doubt learned from the nuns, a finger tapping our less than stellar grades in the file before him. "So," he'd say, dashing our hopes for employment, "I see here, in your permanent records, that you didn't do so well in 4th grade penmanship." He'd cluck his tongue and shake his head, wondering at our hubris, our overwhelming sense of pride that fooled us into thinking we could work for his company with these grades. "I can't hire anyone with records like these," he'd say, and he'd close the file, turn away, and stare out his window, dismissing us without another word. Now, these stories were told to warn us of the ever-present danger of jeopardizing our future lives with shoddy homework and poor attitudes. We had better straighten up and fly right, or for the rest of our lives we'd be working at a gas station pumping gas. Yeah, pumping gas. I often wonder what a bad mark in 4th grade penmanship would prevent us from getting. Corporate scribe? And when I reached high school, I saw little evidence that our records followed us even there. Besides, as we all later learned, it wasn't our grade school or high school records that mattered. It was our credit report. And as you know, they do follow us everywhere. Now, there are many other misconceptions. Some are sprinkled throughout my performance week, so I won't belabor the topic now with more. But I have to wonder, why did they tell us this stuff? And did they believe it? Is this what they were taught, or did they tell us these things to control our thinking? We may never know. However, having trained with the best in passive-aggressive behaviors, I'm talking about Catholics, I gleefully admit that I have extracted a certain level of pain from some clergy since that. One of the best ways to piss off a priest is to ask questions about canonical dogmatic events that aren't in the Bible. "Oh, Father, where in Genesis is the fall of rebel angels?" They get all defensive and mutter with attempted nonchalance, "Well, it's a part of church tradition." Translation, "Look, it's not in the Bible, okay?" In other words, somebody made it up, and it's so far-fetched it didn't even get included in the Bible. Anyway, this has been a sampler of some of Immaculate Misconceptions, my monologue performance that we're going to be performing in July. We're going to have live music with Thalon Singh. You heard a little bit of his live music that I kind of mixed in here. I want to invite you all out to see the performance. We've got it divided up into 3 segments. There's Part 1, which is grades 1 through 4, Part 2, grades 5 through 8, and Part 3, which is, of course, high school. And then on Sunday the 20th, we're going to do all 3 parts together in a long marathon session, which should last about 2 hours and will be an amazing performance.